I'm LeVar Burton. What you are about to see is an introduction to a new documentary series that investigates an emerging and incredibly exciting new science. The science of peace. To many people, perhaps most of us, the idea of peace in this world has become almost mythic, an unattainable goal that exists only in the fertile imaginations of philosophers and storytellers. Why unattainable? Is it perhaps because humankind is hardwired for disunity and conflict? Or is it because we have no long-standing model of peace? Only of conflict and war. Most of us struggle even to achieve inner peace within ourselves. If we can't find individual peace or an end to conflict in our personal relationships, what hope is there for the world? That we have failed to establish a peaceful world is not because we haven't tried. Historically, we organized ourselves into tribes and then nations. We learned that a common identity created a measure of unity. But then these identities became conflicted. Personal fights became wars. Religion has inspired us with great visions of peace and tranquility. But in our zeal to follow these various paths, we've divided ourselves in yet another way. Countless religious wars have been fought in which all sides, ironically, have invoked the name of God. Politics brought us the promise of diplomacy and negotiation, treaties and trade agreements. Yet political ideologies also have been a major cause of conflict and war. After wars, new national boundaries drawn by politicians soon become the source of new conflicts. What hope is there then that politics can establish world peace? There is one important discipline, however, that has been largely silent on the matter of peace. Science. Not because science has nothing to say, but because it has not often been consulted. Except to create new and better weapons with which to wage war. But what does science have to say about peace? We thought it was time to ask. This series, The Science of Peace, demonstrates what inner peace really is, that attaining it actually is possible, and that collectively we can create and finally maintain peace in this world. Is violence among humans inevitable? Or is peace actually possible? Are we victims of our heredity? Are our genes more powerful than we are? Is it possible to individually overwrite our DNA to change our nature? How did a virus transform a violent colony of baboons into a peaceful society? What can cells in a petri dish tell us about the way we behave in the face of a threat? Darwin led us to believe that we must compete in order to survive. But was he right? Can sex reduce violence, as it does among the bonobo chimpanzees who make love, not war? Have we finally located the violence gene?
We're beginning to realize something that is so profoundly new, it is changing the whole paradigm of medicine.
Pioneering biomedical research scientist Dr. Bruce Lipton has made some surprising discoveries regarding the effect of our beliefs on our genes and on our behavior.
we are not controlled by genes as much as we are influenced by our adaptability to the environment. It's this adaptability, the nurture aspect, how we experience life, that selects and programs the genes that we have.
You're saying that it's nurture as opposed to nature that really has the most impact on who we are?
In our study of pathology, less than 2%, it's actually close to 1% of the people can claim that any problems that they experience on this earth are due to having received a bad gene. In fact, interesting point of view, most people are actually missing genes. And yet most people show no concept or consequence of this issue. And the reason
tend to function
completely normally. And the issue is, because there's a thing called capacitance, meaning that the genetic network can actually overlap and interact with in such a way that even if a gene drops out, its function can be covered by other genes in the system.
What about this colony of primates that was studied?
This is a great story. Baboons are notoriously a violent population. The dominant males, they pick on the infants, they pick on the females. In a way, we've always thought that humans were this intelligent form and everything less than humans must be programmed by genes because who teaches them? Well, now we find that in the story you brought up, it's very new, and it says this, is that when the alpha males died out, which was an accident of poisoning, the females started giving more of their attention to males that were less violent in the group. They were picked by the females because of their nonviolence. This whole culture turned upside down and has become a peaceful culture. What it really reveals is it was not genetics. It was totally a cultural environment. It turns out if genes were actually going to control biology as we believed, we would have to have at least 100,000, it was estimated 140,000 genes to make a human. The most recent data from the Human Genome Project says there are less than 26,000 human genes. And so even the leadership behind the Human Genome Project have to stop and realize all of our greatest anticipation that we would resolve everything about life by understanding the genes has now fallen through.
So at what point does your research reveal that we begin to be impacted by the environment as an organism, as a human being develops?
So I was shocked even to find out myself that this impact actually starts in utero. By midway through pregnancy, the fetus is responding to environmental situations, and things that are repeated in that environment are actually learned even before a child is born.
What do you mean?
Well, if let's say that the parents, the mother, is in a situation where like a very abusive relationship or something, and that every time she gets this abuse, she's questioning her own survival. So now here's this fetus, and the mother is in a state of shock or protection, and these signals cross into the placenta and change the blood flow and even the genetic readout of the cells and tissues of the fetus.
What do you mean, the genetic readout?
I didn't say it changed the genetic code.
No.
It changed which genes were going to be activated and which genes were going to be suppressed. The way the parents perceive their environment, especially through the mother, both parents are involved, but it's the mother's information in her blood that coordinates her response to the environment, crosses that placenta, and changes the blood flow patterns and the gene readout in the fetus so that this fetus is going to live in that same environment with the mother.
Right.
And if you can prepare it for this environment, then it's already got a running start for survival.
Let's say you create an environment that is incredibly peaceful. It will also respond to that environment?
Absolutely, it's a continuum. The idea is the organism has to adapt to an environment.
Wow, that's huge.
Profoundly used. It changes our whole belief. Rather than being victims of our genes, we're more or less victims of our perceptions. Because if we change our perceptions or our beliefs and attitudes about life, then we will change our biology to accommodate this.